Welcome aboard the Starship Trapton? Trapton. The Starship Trapton. I don't know what happened there. Welcome aboard the Starship Dragon. I'm Commander Krim. And welcome to my first tier list. We're going a little something new that I'm trying here. We're going to, if you're unfamiliar with what the tier maker is, just a website that has like a wide array of categories of, not just video gaming, but just about everything. And you can kind of customize your own like tiers of quality of certain things. And today, if words is heard, yeah, totally is. Today, we're going to do my favorite favorite video gaming franchise. Pretty sure I would call it my favorite. The Final Fantasy franchise. We're gonna be listing, from what I can tell, literally every single Final Fantasy game that has ever been made up to 2024. A lot of these I have never played. Or going to bother with playing, so we have a tier for that. But I just kind of want to go over these and kind of give my opinion on them. Hear your guys' opinion, both in the chat, and if you'd like to give your opinion on in the comments down below on YouTube, I'd love to hear your opinions on them as well. So let's get started on this. So we're going to go right here, and as you can see, there's the list right up there at the top. The games are down at the bottom. Don't worry, there's many beyond the edge of the screen here. But yeah, this is supposed to be like every Final Fantasy game ever. And you can see the ranks over on the left from top to bottom. The must-plays are the games that I feel that not just I feel, or I should say like this. Those are going to be the games that I feel that everybody should play. Even if you're not a big Final Fantasy fan, or even if you're not a big RPG fan, I feel that everybody really should play these games because they are just top tier. Obviously, like some of the best games to ever exist at all time. Then you got like just the basic like platinum. Instead of going like S tier, A tier, B tier, I think that's a little boring. So I'm going to go with like my own style and give them kind of like a metal rating. So you've got platinum, gold, silver, and bronze. Bronze being like the mid tier, I guess, or maybe silver being mid tier, and then you've got trash. I just think these are games that just absolutely terrible, awful. Kind of the opposite of the must-play tier. These are games that you should really avoid playing. And then obviously I've got the two tiers of like want to play, which is like games I have never played before, but I would like to, and then games that I have never played and really have no interest in playing. So while the bottom tier is not necessarily the worst tier, it is like just ones that I'm just like, meh, I don't really care. Most of them are probably going to be like sequels or spin-offs that I just really have no interest in playing. Hello, Chris. You are not trash. Nobody in here is trash unless I think you're an asshole, and then you're likely have gotten the banhammer boot off the ship. You got blasted out of the airlock, and you're now trying to breathe in space, and you're hopefully suffocating horribly with your eyeballs flying out of your head. Otherwise, if you're here, you're cool, you're awesome, and I thank you so much for being here. Anybody who thinks you're trash, you ain't trash. Stop thinking that. I'm the only trashy one here. If I was trashy, I'd be getting sex. That's not happening either. Never mind, let's move on from that. So we're just going to kind of go through like this, these options here. Some of them are going to be duplicates, I think, because they have like, like for here we have Final Fantasy VI, and then we have what I think is supposed to be the Final Fantasy VI Pixel Remaster, which, for the most part, they're the same game. I mean, obviously, Final Fantasy VI Base is going to be the SNES version, so the visual quality of, like, the fonts and stuff are going to be substantially different, and some of the spell names are going to be different between the original version and the Pixel Remaster. So, we're going to kind of just go with what I feel is like the better versions of as far as the original, the first six, which is going to be the Pixel Remasters. As far as their original versions, I'm just going to kind of put them under the not interested, because I really have no desire to play the original versions of the original 6 games. I just don't care. I played the Pixel Remasters, and that's enough for me. This is going to be good. I hope so, man. And again, also welcome in, and anybody watching, feel free to give your opinions on where they ought to go, both on Twitch and down in the comments below on the YouTube video later. I'm all willing to listen because I really like to hear you guys' opinions. So we're going to start from the top here. And this is, you might be, it's kind of hard to see, so I apologize if it's small. But this is Stranger of Paradise, which is basically a prequel to the first Final Fantasy game. I've only played the demo of this, and I actually enjoyed it. So I'm looking forward to actually playing this. So we're going to put this under the want to play. B-I-M-O. I know where it needs to go. B-I-M-O, and BMO is her name. Hi, BMO. Welcome in. Good to see you in here as well. Hope you're doing well. I'm sure you know where 8 needs to go also. I know you don't care for 8. I probably should have said hello. Oh, no. I like to say hi to everybody that comes in, even if their first comment isn't hi. But yeah, as far as Stranger of Paradise, I actually enjoyed a little bit of the demo that I played, and I would like to play the entire thing. I think I do have it actually in my library, so it's on my want to play list for sure. As long as Stranger of Paradise ends up above Dirge of Cerberus, really? You don't care for Dirge? Okay, well, we're gonna have a little bit of a difference of opinion there, but we'll get to that because it's right here. So this is Final Fantasy 1. This is original. Like this is the OG. This is the first Final Fantasy. This is where the literal Final Fantasy was supposed to be. And for anybody who doesn't know the history of the Final Fantasy franchise, the reason the franchise is called Final Fantasy is the time that this game came out. What was originally SquareSoft at the time was on their way out the door. The writers, the developers, everybody related to the company they were literally at the end of their lifespan. They were about to kick the bucket. And so the developers created this game and called it Final Fantasy because it was going to be their final game they were going to make as far as an overall group. But it was, luckily for them and us as far as the players, good enough that they managed to maintain their business and started a franchise that has the most ironic name, obviously, and they will be Final Fantasies until the end of time. This is the very, very, very first Final Fantasy game. And honestly, I have never played the OG original NES version of Final Fantasy. So I'm going to put it here to the never played, not interested. I don't have a desire to play the OG Final Fantasy. And that's mostly because while I do like playing older games for sure, without a doubt. I mean, hell, I just got through playing Half-Life and Half-Life 2. I do have like my limit for how old a game I want to play. Typically my border, my threshold is any game that's older than the NES era. There's a few exceptions because there's some PC games that I still would like to play that is actually older than the NES. But for the most part, I don't want to play anything older than the NES era. I don't want to play any Atari games. I don't want to play anything on the Commodore 64. I have nothing against those consoles, but the NES was the first console game that I played, the first console that I played on, which was the first Super Mario game. So I just really don't have a desire to play anything older than that. So as far as the Final Fantasy games, I don't really want to play the original Final Fantasy game, or actually any of the Final Fantasies prior to 6, outside of the Pixel remasters. I just don't really have the desire to do so. In contrast, though, Final Fantasy 1, the Pixel remaster, I'm going to put it under the bronze level, which is, I think it deserves a little bit higher than bronze. I'm going to give it silver. It's like right in the middle, I feel. I see why it was the beginning of I see why it was the starter. I see how the franchise took off. I think it's a good game. I truly do. But it's missing a lot of the things that I enjoy about JRPGs and RPGs in general, and that's mostly like storytelling. Final Fantasy 1, I feel, is a little closer to the Zelda franchise. And I mean that just as far as like, okay, here's your world, here's your characters, go have fun. There wasn't really a whole lot of, okay, you're starting from here, you have an objective to go here and do this. Once you do that, you have an objective to go here and do this. Then you go have an objective here to go do this. And that's kind of how Final Fantasy One. That's kind of how. Sorry, that's kind of how the Zelda franchise is. You don't really have specifically an objective to go do. You just kind of have a not really open world, but sort of like open world to go explore and do things. And Final Fantasy One, and for the most part, the first three Final Fantasies, I feel are kind of the same way. And kind of like what you said, Red, they're kind of the same thing. The characters themselves don't really have any depth, especially the main characters, because you can customize them completely. You customize their names, you customize their jobs, and so on and so forth. They're all really just whatever you want them to be. And so there's not really a whole lot of character development there for the characters themselves. And the characters outside of the main characters, the NPCs, short of the villain itself, not really a whole lot to them. Very, very basic in design. Now, granted, again, you have to think about the time that Final Fantasy One came out, which was the early 80s, I believe. I think Final Fantasy One was 84 or 86, I forget. But in the 80s, or NES era, it was, rather groundbreaking. Not a whole lot of other games are in that style of gameplay and so forth. Is World of Final Fantasy on here? I believe it is. I'm pretty sure. Every game that has Final Fantasy in the title is in this list somewhere. I'm pretty sure. But yeah, missing character depth. Yeah, there's not a whole lot of actual character. For Final Fantasy One, it's really about the world, not the characters. And I feel that's a very important point in the later Final Fantasy games. So moving on from Final Fantasy One, this is Final Fantasy Two, the OG. Going to put it into the same category as the original Final Fantasy. I don't have desire to play the OG, so we're just going to move on from there. Now we're talking the Final Fantasy Two pixel remaster. I'm also going to give it the silver because it's kind of the same thing as Final Fantasy One, but a little bit better in the fact that the characters do actually have names. The characters are given some kind of backstory. They are unique in their own manner. So they get like a step up from Final Fantasy One. One was one was good, and two was a drastic step back. You think so? I kind of like two a little bit better than one in that manner, as far as like the character development, because each of the characters had their own names. They kind of had like some semblance of an origin story, a backstory to them, a little bit of character development, more so than Final Fantasy One. Two's gameplay was garbage. But what I remember of two, wasn't two the one where like you sort of customized how, or I should say it like this. I think Final Fantasy Two, how you fought during battle built up how their stats built. So like if you did more physical attacks, their strength stats went up, and if you used magic more, their magic stat went up whenever they leveled up. Isn't that how two worked? It's been a really long time since I played the pixel remasters of the first four games, but I think that's how two went, and that was I kind of like that customizability to it, but I can see how that was disliked because usually in most games, most of the Final Fantasy games, in RPGs in general, whenever you level up, based on your class, all your stats kind of get an overall boost. I mean, again, some stats will boost more than others. Like for warriors, whenever you level up, your strength stat, your defense stat will boost more. For mages, while your strength stat does go up, your magic stat, magic defense stats will get a higher boost and so forth. That like overall, all-encompassing level up system is what's a little more common, and I kind of do like that better. Although I will give you Final Fantasy II the uniqueness of that type of level up system. Honestly, what I can say is I don't remember a lot about Final Fantasy II. Kind of the same way as I don't remember a lot about Final Fantasy I's like story and world overall. I think in Final Fantasy II, the main villain was just called the Emperor, and then like eventually like controlled hell and then controlled heaven or something like that, if I recall correctly. See, again, like the stories are forgettable, and that's why I don't think they're the greatest games. But I don't think they deserve a very low rating either. Um, and now that brings us to this, which is Final Fantasy 1 and 2. I don't know what this is exactly. I'm going to put it down here because I'm going to guess this is just like a package deal. So I'm not entirely sure what this consists of. If this is strictly just Final Fantasy 1 and 2, you know, together, okay, fine. I don't have it. I have no opinion on it other than what I've already mentioned. Um, this is Final Fantasy Origins, Final Fantasy 1 and 2 for the PlayStation 1, I think. So kind of another uh, collection of the first two Final Fantasy games. I have no interest in no opinion on that one. Final Fantasy 1 and 2 Dawn of Souls. I don't know what this is. Um, to your character progression was based on actions in battle. Okay, that's what I thought. That's what I thought. I appreciate that uniqueness, but that does kind of restrict you on what you can do, especially when it comes to something like mages. Excuse me. Excuse me. Because if you're trying to build up your mage and you got to cast a magic a lot in order to build up your magic stat, once you run an MP, if you can't restore that MP, your mage is forced to either just sit there and play with their collective dick, or actually, in order to get involved, would have to do a physical attack, which would boost their strength stat, which is completely pointless as far as trying to build them up as far as their magic goes. So I see how that being an issue. Origins was good because of the graphical updates. Okay, all right. Dawn of Souls was a step above Origins because of the new dungeons. It was awesome. So Dawn of Souls was like a sort of. Would you relate? Would you compare it to like Kingdom Hearts Final Mix? So there was like it was the same game but with some additional extras. Is that how you would Soul of Rebirth and Soul of Chaos? Is that how you would compare them? Because I've never heard of the Dawn of Souls stuff. So I'm going to put them just here because I have no desire to play them. But it kind of sounds like what it is. It's sort of like just a retelling of the same story with some additional features, like an international version or a Final Mix version. Here's Final Fantasy III, the original version, so we're going to put it up here and they're not interested. For Final Fantasy III in the Pixel Remaster, I feel it's going to go kind of just in the right in the middle of it, silver category. I don't really have any. The new dungeons weren't purely canonical, but gave the players more to experience. Okay, so additional gameplay, or like even if you want to say like the Dark Aeons of Final Fantasy X, it's just a little more content to the original game. Okay, I can appreciate that. I can appreciate that. But yeah, Final Fantasy III, I feel kind of go in the same area as 1 and 2. Nothing really overall special. Um, I feel like they gave you more options for character classes in Final Fantasy III. You could literally build them all almost any way you wanted to, and I do appreciate that. You had like each one had a three's DS remake was superior to the OG. Okay. I remember that three, you like every character could become every class. So you literally could build an entire party of just one class if you wanted to. And I think that's what I did in Final Fantasy III. Like eventually I learned the Dragoon class, and then I made every character in my party just 4 Dragoons, and we just spam jump. And that's pretty much how I fought the entire game, all the way through to the final boss. And so I feel that's a nice way to kind of give your characters customization, but it also doesn't give them any uniqueness. It doesn't get them any kind of standout qualities. If you can make all 4 of your characters a Dragoon, there's nothing special about them. Okay, they all have different names, maybe, but no special stats, no special advantages or disadvantages, or strengths or weaknesses. And that's not, you know, I feel like a cast of characters for an RPG should all have uniqueness in some certain way besides just a name and appearance. You know, and Final Fantasy III, while that was a nice addition, the downside is they don't feel unique in any way. I think this is probably the Final Fantasy IV. It looks like maybe a DS version or maybe the original. I don't know. I'm going to put this one down here as well. But we're going to go to we're going to Final Fantasy IV Pixel Remaster. I feel this is where Final Fantasy took off, as far as like going in order from like going down the line numerically 1, 2, 3, 4, and so forth. I feel this is where Final Fantasy started becoming more really gained storytelling roots, because you got story characters that had arcs to them, that you had character development that was very critical. Sometimes the character development was actually part of the world's development, which is fantastic. You had like characters like the Red Wings, was it the Red Wings or the Red Barons, something like that. Four's your favorite, hands down. I can see why. I can certainly see why. Three's DS port also had character names. Okay. Yeah, each character had their own class, their own unique styles, their own unique skills. I will say, if there is one complaint I had about the character development of 4, is the fact that the main character goes from a rather powerful character. Cecil was a very powerful Dark Knight, and then becomes a paladin, and honestly I feel became a weaker character as far as like gameplay is concerned. Now the Red Wings Baron Castle, okay, I knew the names kind of like got lost in my memory, but yeah, the fact that Cecil is a Dark Knight and actually seems like a pretty powerful character, and then becomes a paladin, and as far as gameplay concerns, I disliked that. I feel he became a weaker character. But as far as storyline and him overcoming his Dark Knight nature and becoming a light character, becoming a sort of good character, I truly like that kind of development. And that is something that makes Final Fantasy IV stand out from the previous 3, because of that type of character development, which was critical to the world development and so forth. And the fact that you had like Rydia, for example, who when you first meet her is a child who has the ability to literally be a summoner. And then she disappears for a while, and the next time you see her, she's grown up. And, you know, again, character development, character growth, and like in the case of Rydia, literal character growth, because she goes from being a child to an adult. And, you know, that's just really, really cool, you know, character development that you don't get in the previous 3 games. You have Kane Highwind, who is like a main character for the party, kind of becomes a sort of villainous and antagonist, and you have to deal with him, and then eventually he becomes like this, like kind of conflicted good guy, bad guy. So again, you know, character development. You know, I feel like JRPGs are at their peak when not only do you have a good world and locations that are good and good world development, but also the characters that are involved, the heroes that are trying to save the world, also have their own problems, their own unique backstories, their own level of growth that makes them a better person. And that's where Final Fantasy IV gets a huge step up from the previous 3. And I believe that all the games, for the most part, from there really excel from that point. This is where storytelling in Final Fantasy IV really, or the Final Fantasy franchise, really took off. Cecil's transformation, in my opinion, made him stronger. What and that we realize is that the player's true strength are the characters that surround the main protagonist, which really is a trope used throughout the rest of Final Fantasy. I completely agree. I completely agree. His desire to throw away his dark roots to become a better person is a critical point, and very, very important, and can be used as you said, a trope, as far as a perspective, maybe not so much from like a dark to light like parallel, but from going like a character that is very, even all the way up to somebody like Cloud, who is very much at the beginning of Final Fantasy VII, very much like a selfish, like assholey, antisocial. I'm doing this for me because I'm me and don't really care about your opinion. I don't care about being part of this anti eco green organization, anti Shinra group. I don't really care about your goals. I'm just here to do a job, get paid, and move on. And that's how. But then eventually, Cloud realizes that he is, his selfishness is not going to be enough to stop Shinra and what he knows to be an even bigger threat in that Sephiroth and all that other stuff. Which that's a big old story that we'll get to when we get to the seventh entry. The addition of white magic and cover also would dispute gave him more abilities and depth and less of a step back. Okay. I don't disagree with what you're saying. Again, because I've only played the first 5 Final Fantasies literally only once, that was through the Pixel remasters, my memory of them isn't fantastic, but I do remember some of the specific things like the character building and the fact that the storytelling style of 4 is so dramatically different. Now, this I believe from Game Boy Advance, this is Final Fantasy 4. I believe it's called the After Years or the I forget the actual subtitle of Final Fantasy IV, but this is supposedly like a sequel to Final Fantasy IV. I don't know a lot about it, other than it's supposed to be a sequel, and I hear that I have an issue with Cloud. With Final Fantasy IV, it's, from what I've heard, they almost copy and paste the original story of Final Fantasy IV, but they just like changed some names and some minor events. After Years is the correct title? Okay. And so basically the difference between Final Fantasy IV and the After Years is at best cosmetic. That's all that I know about Final Fantasy IV After Years. So, I'm going to put it there, and I'm going to say you guys have your opinion on it, and I'll let you just go with it. I have no desire to play it, especially if those rumors are accurate, and it's just Final Fantasy IV 2.0. There's really no point in me playing it. Final Fantasy IV, the After Years. There's the. I don't know why this is different. Maybe this is a different console. I'm gonna just put it down here and give the same opinion. Zilch. I have nothing on it. I cannot see this image very well at all. It looks like, it's PSP, obviously. I'm guessing it's the PSP release of Final Fantasy IV. I'm just going to put it there and move on. I have nothing else to say about it. It says Final Fantasy Chronicles, which has Final Fantasy IV and Chrono Trigger? Or Chrono Cross? This image is so small and I can't click on it to zoom in. I'm really not sure what this is. So I'm just going to put it in this category and just move on. Not so much a copy and paste, but there's a lot of pacing issues in the story. I liked what they did, but you'd have to be a Final Fantasy IV nerd like me to appreciate the After Years. Okay, fair enough. I can understand that. There's a number of games that I've probably played that I would enjoy any kind of sequels or spin-offs more because I just like the original lore so much more. Don't mean to keep rhyming, but yeah, I can understand that. Is that Chrono Trigger? Okay. I kind of can see the logo, but it's really hard to, it's really, really tiny. Okay, we're just looking, this is original Final Fantasy V. I'm going to put it here. Final Fantasy V Pixel Remaster. I will say I didn't finish it. I will say I did not finish it. And it's only because I was kind of irritated at how. Okay, let me back up a little bit here. Final Fantasy V, I didn't, as far where I stopped was the final boss. I couldn't beat the final boss. And that was primarily because I didn't like how the save system worked in Final Fantasy V. This was kind of a common thing in the era of the early Final Fantasies. So it's really just a product of its time and just not something that I like. And I'm referring to how the save system works. For me, before you go fight a major boss, especially a final boss, you should have a save point before a final boss or final boss gauntlet. Even if you go through like a large dungeon to get there, and then you have a save point at the end, and then you go fight the final boss. So if you screw up and you die, you just go right back to that save point and you go try it again. You don't have to go through the entire fucking final dungeon again just to go reach the final boss and go fight him. Or if there is a save point at the end, you can just fast travel there if you decide you need to try again. My problem with the end of Final Fantasy V was if I felt like I needed to grind more or I needed to get more items, I had to walk out of the dungeon all the way out of the final dungeon, and then I think the final dungeon was on the moon, right? And then you had to leave the moon, go back to Earth or whatever the name of the main planet was. Why am I getting all shaky? And then go find a shop, go get a bunch of items, and then travel back to the moon, travel all the way back to the final dungeon, then go through the final dungeon, and then go to the final boss again. And for me, whatever going through that long-ass process, unless I just skipped every enemy, which was very hard to do, when I went back and bought a bunch of items, I used up those items just to get back to the final boss, and then I had no items for the final boss. And that got on my nerves, and that's why I never really finished beating. I believe it was X-Death. X-Death was the final boss of Final Fantasy V, and that's why I never actually finished it. So because of that little tiny thing, I am going to put it under the bronze category. But I will say that I can appreciate the uniqueness of the Final Fantasy V world probably the most of the first 5 Final Fantasies, because of the fact that you start off, if I recall correctly, you start off in like a small map, and then you exit the small map, and then suddenly you're like, holy shit, there's a giant small map. There's like you thought the whole world was this tiny little world down here. No. You leave that, and there's this whole other giant world that you get to explore. And then on top of that, you leave giant world to go to space and go on the fucking moon? Excuse me? That is awesome. That is really, really cool. Something that you really don't see in JRPGs, much less the Final Fantasy franchise after this. I really, really liked that. That was a really awesome aspect. But the whole dungeon crawl part of the end of 5 really just absolutely killed it for me. I'm really disappointed that I never went back and finished it. I should probably take the time to go back and do that just for completionist sake. I really don't like leaving games unfinished unless I really, really hated it. And I didn't hate Final Fantasy V, but it was a huge drawback for me having to do that backtracking through the dungeon and all that. It annoyed me. It really, really did. 5 is definitely more tolerable with fast forward options. Yeah, I completely agree. And this is Game Boy Advance, Final Fantasy V. Put it down here. I don't care. I will say I did play original Final Fantasy VI on the SNES. I enjoyed it, but I certainly can't say that I enjoyed the Pixel remaster more, mostly because of the aesthetic reasons. I like the names of the magic spells and stuff like that better. I like the better font. It's easier to read. I didn't. If there was one thing for sure that I really didn't like about seeing the original SNES through NES era of Final Fantasies, is the way that they had to shorten spells and skills and sometimes the names of enemies because they were so limited on characters because of file size, because of the cartridges. There's a physical limitation to how much data they could put on a cartridge, so they had to shrink things just as simply as names. So you had things like, the fire spells and so forth. They had to be like switched down to where like they had to drop a few letters. You still knew what the spell was, but because they couldn't spell out the whole word, it just looked bad. I didn't care for it. So, that said, I'm going to give Final Fantasy VI OG bronze, but I'm going to put 6 in the gold category. 6 pixel remaster. 6 is easily, in my opinion, the best of the pixel Final Fantasies. Absolutely the best. Storytelling was phenomenal. The character development, phenomenal. Uh, easily the best villain in the franchise, and that's saying something, considering my favorite game of the franchise is 7, and I love Sephiroth. Sephiroth is absolutely awesome. I truly believe Kefka is the best villain of the Final Fantasy franchise. That said, I do want to say I feel that he was unnecessarily absent. He was very absent from the game after he destroys the world. Spoilers, by the way. If you're watching this tier list, you probably know these games. You shouldn't be worried about spoilers. But after the events where he literally destroys the world and you go to the world of ruin, Kefka pretty much disappears. You never hear from him again until you fight him at the end of the game. Now, I don't know how they could have changed that to have made Kefka more involved in what goes on in the world of ruin. Even though for the most part, the whole journey of the world of ruin is to regather the hero characters that were split up after the events of the ruining of the world. But I feel like once he did his job of destroying the world, it was like, okay, I did it. I destroyed everything I want to do. I'm just going to sit back in my my throne recliner up here and just, we'll take me a nap. I mean, he literally just disappears. Up to that point, Kefka is predominantly like up your ass pretty much the whole game. He's poisoning the water supply of cities. He's sending his Magitek troops to go flatten an entire village. He's going to attack this castle. He murders the Emperor Gestal and blah 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 blah. Bullshit on top of bullshit on top of bullshit on top of evil on top of evil. I mean, Kefka is up there much deeper than Zeramis. Yeah, Kefka is just like, if there is an evil that he can do, I mean, if they could have shown him like holding a cat and slapping a cat around, he probably would have done that too. He was just, he was the purest evil of the Final Fantasy franchise. But then after he destroys the world, he's just poof. I feel like they should have done more for him during the World of Ruin section of the game. On the contrarian side of that, the world being destroyed in Final Fantasy VI and the despair and sadness of all the characters, especially Celeste. Celes. I like pronouncing it Celes. I don't know how it's supposed to be pronounced, but I think Celes seems most accurate. But anyway, especially Celes and Cid. I didn't personally get tear jerked from that scene, but that whole scene is one of the most emotional scenes in the franchise, probably in RPGs in general. It is just, oh my god, it is so heart-wrenching, especially Celes, especially if Cid dies. Celes is just like, oh my god, you feel so bad for her. God, they portray that, the music, the events, the her jumping off the cliff and everything. Oh my god, they present it so well. I mean, wow. I should probably I'd have to make my own. I want to make a tier list of like the most emotional moments. Put this in like my mental notes. I want to make a tier list of the most emotional moments, the most impactfully emotional moments in Final Fantasy, and without a doubt, Celis in 6 would be up there near the top, without a doubt. Without a doubt. Hi, Josh. Good to see you. Welcome in. And my headphones turned off, so I didn't hear your thing. My headphones turned off when there's not enough sound. Probably could turn some. You know what? Let's do that real quick. Hang on. Give me a second here. Let me do one thing real fast. Let's get a little music going on here, so you don't just hear my flapping jaws. I feel this is a very appropriate playlist considering what we're doing here. Excuse me. Turn my headphones back on. Come on, headphones, wake up. There we go. Okay. I couldn't hear anything. When my headphones don't detect sound for X amount of time, they turn off to save battery. I think this is a good playlist to use considering we're doing Final Fantasy tier list. Probably gonna get the holy crap DMC8 out of me because, yeah. But what do I care anymore? But we have another request for the professor, so before we get it any further, let's do that real fast. We're looking at Kefka versus Xande, X-Death, Zeramus, Kujo, Ultimation Sin. 11 isn't a fair comparison to others. 14 because they keep adding big bars, although the Shadow Lord story is pretty badass. Xande. Who was Xande? Which one was he from? That name doesn't ring a bell. Who was Xande? Zandy, whatever. Xande. That one doesn't ring a bell. I know it's like Final Fantasy 1 was Garland, 2 was the Emperor, 3 was the Cloud of Darkness, 4 was Golbez. No, 4 was Golbez turned out to be a good guy eventually, right? 4 was 4 Zeramus? 4 was Zeramus, wasn't he? And then 5 was X-Death, and 6 obviously Kefka. Yeah, 4 has to be Zeramus. Funny that Funny that I just now realized this. In 4, Zeramus is the ultimate villain, but in Dissidia, 4's villain is represented by Golbez. Huh, I just now realized that. Huh. Yeah, 4 is Zeramus. I thought so. Okay. Yeah, as far as 11 and 14's villains, I mean, 11 and 14 get their own special category because they're MMO and they constantly, well, for a while at least with 11, they were constantly growing. It's sort of like saying Destiny 2 or Destiny in general doesn't really have a main villain. I mean, Destiny actually did with The Witness, but we really didn't know who that was until, like, well, when did The Witness first start being discussed? That was that in Lightfall when Witnesses started to get discussed? So while the villain was always there, you really didn't know or discuss The Witness until nearly the end of the series. So, you know, trying to pick out a main villain for 11 and 14 is really hard to say, considering that those worlds are constantly evolving and changing. So the ultimate villain is really going to be based on, you know, what's the current story right now. That's really it. Xander. Consider Xander as 3's big bad because the Cloud of Darkness was introduced at the very end. The only reason I remember Cloud of Darkness so well is, one, her name is Cloud, and they had to differentiate her from Final Fantasy VII's Cloud, and she's basically naked in Dissidia, with literally just one little heart covering the best part that you want to see. So you're both horny and scared at the same time because she's nearly naked, but she's got like giant snakes coming out of her back. Don't ask me about my fetishes, you don't want to know. Anyway, moving on. Yeah, 6 Pixel Remaster, definitely the best of the Pixel franchise, Pixel Final Fantasy. Absolutely phenomenal, greatest. And Terra's theme. I mean, there's several great themes of 6, but Terra's theme, easily one of the best character themes in Final Fantasy. One of the best. Absolutely love Terra's theme. I will listen to that song. I will listen to Terra's theme almost on infinite loop. It's just so good. In relation to that, kind of going back to Final Fantasy III, of the Pixel remasters, I feel Final Fantasy III's battle theme, I don't know, I head bobbed every time I heard that theme when we went into battle. I don't know what was so special about it to me, but whenever I heard the battle theme of Final Fantasy III, I was just like, yeah, this is awesome. Every time. Every time. Okay, moving on from 6. This is GBA of Final Fantasy VI. We're just going to put it down here. Don't care. I cannot even see what this says. What the hell does that say? I cannot see it. It's so small. I have no idea what this is. I don't know what Final Fantasy game that's supposed to represent. I don't know what it is. I'm just going to put it down here. If I can't see it, I'm not going to... If I don't recognize the logo, I'm not going to care. Let's see if we can keep the tier list entirely on the screen. Alright, this is like Final Fantasy VI. What is this? This looks like a Magitech, so I don't know what this is. I don't know what this is. I'm gonna put this down here as well. I don't know what it is. I can't see it. It looks like a Final Fantasy VI Magitech, but Final Fantasy. I cannot read that. If anybody knows what that is, feel free to let me know. I cannot read that. I don't know what that is. So moving on. Before Crisis, Final Fantasy VII. I have not played Before Crisis. I know I've seen a few scenes of it, and I am aware. Final Fantasy VII, your introduction to Final Fantasy, same per two, same. Final Fantasy VII was the first JRPG I'd ever played, so it holds a special place in my heart, right alongside Chrono Trigger, because I kind of played them both back to back right about the same time. So I love them both equally. So 14, A Realm Reborn is La Habrea, Heavenward is arguably Thordian or Nidhogg, Stormblood is Xenos, Shadowbringers is between Emmett, Selch, or Illidi. My God, I can't get that one. Usually good at reading these crazy Final Fantasy names. This one's fucking with me. Elidibus. I'm gonna call him Eli. Endwalker is Medion, Dawntrail is Fiend for now. I like the name Medion, that sounds cool. Mateon, whatever. I've seen a few scenes, or a few cut scenes of Before Crisis. I don't really have an intention to play it, although I probably should because I love the 7 franchise. But what I do know is that Before Crisis's rendition of the Nibelheim incident, specifically Cloud's Cloud and Sephiroth's fight, if you will, inside the Mount Nebel reactor, is the worst recreation, the worst rendition, the worst telling of the game. In case you aren't aware, in Before Crisis, actually, let me back up. Let me explain the whole scene. In the scene we're referring to, in case you're not familiar with the 7 franchise, or the 7 franchise series itself, after Sephiroth injures Tifa and defeats Zack in a one-on-one, he wants to take Genova's head to the promised land. He's lost. Sephiroth has lost his mind. He feels he deserves to be the ultimate god of the entire world, and he's going to take his mom's head and become God. Well, while he was obsessing over his mother, Cloud takes Zack's sword and impales him while he's distracted. So Sephiroth is completely unaware that he was there until the giant Buster sword just protruded through his back. Well, it doesn't kill him because he's Sephiroth, he's practically unkillable. But as he's like limping out of the reactor, Cloud tries to stop Sephiroth from leaving. And in doing so, Sephiroth decides to shove his 10-foot katana through Cloud's shoulder. In the original 7, and Crisis Core kind of does a rendition of this as well, Cloud overpowers Sephiroth just through sheer will and anger, lifts Sephiroth off of his feet, and throws him against the wall and into the Mako down below, and Sephiroth essentially is killed and vanishes. Story goes on from there that Sephiroth didn't actually die, his will remained, and there's a lot of extra that goes on after that. But shorthand version of it is Cloud's pure anger and will, the anger of seeing the woman that he essentially loves, his best friend, both being nearly critically injured, his hometown had just got burnt to the ground by Sephiroth. All that rage just made him overpower the most powerful man in the world, even though he was severely injured as well, and throw him off of a bridge. In Before Crisis, there's this weird, mystical, like magical alien energy that overwhelms Cloud, and that gives him the strength to overpower Sephiroth. And then Sephiroth, refusing to accept defeat, throws himself voluntarily into the Mako below, into the Mako below. It makes absolutely no sense whatsoever, and is easily the worst telling of the Nibelheim incident. It's just absolutely makes no sense whatsoever. And so, that alone makes me not want to play Before Crisis. That's a stupid way to tell that story. We say that's FF Anthology. You talk about this one here with the Magitech Anthology, originally released for the PS1. It had the first official US port of Final Fantasy V with soundtrack and cutscenes. Okay. Then fine. Thank you for telling me. It stays in that category. I don't care. Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis. I need to try to make this work. I need to try to make this game work. I'm going to put it into the want to play. Because I tried playing it some time back and I just couldn't make the game work. I know it's a mobile game, but I can play it through Steam. Excuse me, I'm sorry. But I would like to see how they tell the story of primarily Sephiroth. We see a lot about young Sephiroth in Ever Crisis, and I am truly interested to see how young Sephiroth, let me just throw out a blanket statement here. Probably my favorite character in all of Final Fantasy, talking about my waifus and stuff, that's a different conversation. But it's like my favorite character overall, without a doubt, is Sephiroth. I think everything about him is just so cool. His character design, his motivations are a little weird, his Oedipus complex is a little, but he's super strong, super fast, he's got an awesome sword, he just looks incredibly cool. And in most games that you get to play as him, like in Rebirth, fucking hell, man. His gameplay in Rebirth is phenomenal. I wish you could play more. He's just so fun to play as in Rebirth. So I would really love to see his backstory in Ever Crisis. I really, really would. I'd love to see that. So that's definitely going to be on the want to play list. You don't know what the blue one is, though. I don't either. I really can't tell you. I can't read anything that it says. I have no idea. I can't even tell you. It's on the PlayStation 1, I think, judging by this logo here. I have no clue what any of that says. I wonder if it's specifically a Japanese-only release that was released to like 40 people. This is Final Fantasy VII: The First Soldier. I think the First Soldier was supposed to be like a Fortnite using the Final Fantasy VII characters. Never played it, never saw it, have no desire to play it. So I don't give a care about First Soldier. I don't care. I don't even think that. I think the game doesn't even exist anymore. I think they shut down the servers. I really can't. I click on it, but I can't do anything with it. That's as big as it gets. I can't make it bigger. I guess I might be able to zoom in on it. Let me see if I can like. It just says Final Fantasy Collection. Doesn't say anything else. If the game titles are in these names here, then I don't know what they are. It looks like 4, 5, and 6. I see the Roman numerals here, so I'm guessing this is Final Fantasy 3, 4, 5, and 6. It just says Final Fantasy Collection. That's all I've got. Oh, that's too close. Okay. Whoa. All right. There we go. Close enough, I guess. I messed up how I had it. There we go. All right, I'll take that. Good enough. It was canceled. Okay, I thought it was. Original Crisis Core. Original Crisis Core. Silver. I enjoyed it for what it was. You know what? No. I'm gonna say bronze. I enjoyed it for what it was. I thought it was okay. The gameplay is mostly what I was concerned with, and it wasn't phenomenal. You know, if I recall correctly, Zack pretty much had like one attack skill. It was just like, when you just attack, you just had one swing. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Now he did have, you could like combine materia and get other skills and stuff that you could use, but his regular attack was just very, very bland and very boring. I did appreciate the story though. I did like how it led up to OG7. The addition of Genesis was weird. And the whole thing behind Genesis, you know, just his existence, was kind of weird. It did give the game a villain besides Sephiroth, because Sephiroth as a villain was obviously a given, considering everybody knows the story of 7. But Genesis, I feel, was a weak character. And that's mostly because he was modeled after a guy named Gat, who is, I believe, a Japanese singer. And I don't know, it just, I didn't like him. Now, it wasn't Final Fantasy. In contrast to OG Crisis Core Reunion, absolutely incredible. Everything about Reunion was great. I loved Crisis Core Reunion. Everything about Crisis Core Reunion was phenomenal, especially the gameplay. I mean, granted, the story beats, the story moments, the dialogue, for the most part, was copy and paste from OG Crisis Core. There were a few changes here and there, like the voice actors were different to match their voice actors for Remake and Rebirth. Like the voice actor for Sephiroth in Reunion is the same they have in Remake and Rebirth. It is not the voice actor they had in OG Crisis Core, which is the same voice actor they used in Advent Children and Kingdom Hearts 2. Yeah, Gact. Yeah, it's fucking Genesis. Now, all that said about Reunion, Genesis is still. Why are you a thing? But that's. I mean, again, they had to give the game an antagonist or villain, and Angeal was meant to be a positive role model for Zack, and while eventually does become an opponent, Angeal was not the right level to be considered an antagonist or villain. Angeal is really meant to be the antithesis of Zack. Sort of. But more like a I guess an idol, really. You know, a mentor, really. More than anything else. You take a chug of water. But the overall, the gameplay of Crisis Core Reunion, incredible. Granted, if there is a downside to it, you can break it pretty easily. You really can. With the right materia, what do they call it? Materia fusion. With the right materia fusion combinations, you can absolutely break the game to all hell. Some of the hardest missions, like the side missions to Crisis Core, are walks in the park if you build Zack with the right materia fusions. Max out the stats, give him a whole bunch of really ridiculously powerful abilities. You know, most of the time I would use jump drain, I think is what it was called, where you would jump in the air. Basically, it was a Dragoon attack. You jump in the air, making you completely immune to attacks because you were in midair. And then when you land, you deal area of effect damage in a very large area, and that damage translates back into health. So if you did take some damage, you pretty much restored it right away. You were practically never injured. Your HP was never low as long as you kept doing jump drain over and over again. And you combine that with like MP drain as well, or MP or AP drain, and you can pretty much jump drain infinitely, and you never run out of AP. So you really, really could break the hell out of Crisis Core. So moving on to OG Final Fantasy VII on the PlayStation. Now this is going to encompass every iteration of Final Fantasy VII. Let me start by saying, believe it or not, I have never played the original PS1 version of Final Fantasy VII. Never have. The earliest version I played was the first PC version that I think came out in 1999, I want to say. Not the Steam version, like the first PC version. But I have played every other version of OG Final Fantasy VII besides the original PS1 version. English version, I mean. I haven't played the Japanese version of 7 either. And without a doubt, I feel it goes in the must-play. I feel that every person, whether you are a RPG fan, whether you're a fan of the Final Fantasy franchise, everybody who plays video games at some point or another, I feel should play Final Fantasy VII OG. It is a classic game. It is a huge staple in the entire video game franchise. It's one of the most iconic video games of all time. The characters are very iconic. You played OG 7 on PS1? You know, pretty much every character in 7 is recognizable by gamers that have never even played the game. Everybody knows what Cloud looks like. Everybody knows what Sephiroth looks like. Everybody knows Tifa, Aerith, you know, Barrett. Everybody that has ever played video games will likely recognize those characters, even if they've never played 7. And I feel that 7 is one of the games that everybody should play at least once at some point in their lives, even if you only do literally the main story. And even if you don't get it, even if you don't fully understand it, I feel it's a game you should just be playing. There is a small handful of games that I feel deserve that kind of ranking. Half-Life is one of them. I think Half-Life is a game that should be considered iconic. At least Halo 1, maybe even Halo 2 is to that level. Doom, like the original 2D Dooms, I feel deserve that kind of treatment. Those are games that they should be played by every gamer ever, just for their iconic nature and their history. Now, we have next Final Fantasy VII Remake. Now, since Rebirth has come out, Remake has gone down as far as how good I feel the game is. If I were to rate this game when it first released in 2020, I would easily probably put it in the platinum, if not the must-play categories, here or here, without a doubt. But it's hard not to compare it to Rebirth, and since then, I feel deserves just a silver. For the nostalgia factor and how they took the original world of Final Fantasy VII in Midgar and kept it very true to the original, and then added so much depth to Midgar and made it feel like a giant, huge city. I mean, Midgar already felt huge in OG7. Granted, you could get through the entirety of Midgar, even if you go just straight through the main game, in probably about an hour and a half, if you really, really pushed it. Because there's really not a lot to it, but the city still felt huge in the overall scope of things, of OG7. But then they take that scope and they magnify it by 100, and they give you a deeper area underground with the hidden research facility underneath Sector 7. You return to Sector 7 after the collapse of the pillar and can explore that. They add a lot more depth to the characters that you see in Midgar, like the rest of Avalanche, like Jesse, Biggs, and Wedge. So much more character to the NPCs that are around Midgar, and add characters that are, while not in the original game, really felt like they belong in that world, like say Leslie and the little girl, Betty, I think was her name, the little cat girl. They add so much more to that, and then tack on top of that, integrate with Yuffie's DLC, and they add even more to Midgar, and giving Yuffie a additional backstory as well. Remake is absolutely great, really, really is, and really wets the whistle for the people like me who felt Final Fantasy VII needed to be retold with better fidelity, better visuals, excellent voice acting, and so forth. Remake hits all those marks perfectly. However, when you compare it to Rebirth, it is extremely limited. It's sort of like Kingdom Hearts 1 versus Kingdom Hearts 2. Kingdom Hearts 1, in its own accord, especially when it first came out, was great. Absolutely phenomenal. Gameplay, storytelling, characters, all of it was great. But then they came out with Kingdom Hearts 2, and it was 10 times better than Kingdom Hearts 1. Same thing can be said about Remake versus Rebirth. And that's why Rebirth Must play. Absolutely must play. While I wouldn't recommend Rebirth, or I should say it like this, while I wouldn't recommend Remake be skipped just for Rebirth, because there are a number of references in Rebirth that would be missed if you didn't play Remake. Like, there's some characters that you meet in Rebirth that if you didn't play Remake, you would kind of wonder, who the hell are these people? Like, you see Madame M and Andrea Rodea, for example, in Remake. You wouldn't know who these characters are, and the references they make and what they, how they were involved in Remake's events would be missed out on. Rebirth, I feel, is a fantastic game. The out of the open world was incredibly good. It was exactly what an open world needed to be. Cloud, you asshole! Yeah. One of the best lines. Just hearing Aerith swear, just in general, is just one of those really moments. Because, you know, you see Aerith as like the pretty, proper princess kind of character, right? Like the clean, pretty princess. You know, that's how everybody kind of sees Aerith being portrayed, right? But then when she says shit for the first time in Remake, you're like, she just thinks shit? She just cuss? There is nobody who knew the character of Aerith, either in OG or in general, and saw that scene where she's climbing up that rusty ladder and it starts to break. There is nobody that wasn't surprised by that. Anybody that says otherwise is lying. They went, what? What did she say? Did she just cuss? That was amazing. So, you know, tack onto that with Aerith and Tifa both calling Cloud an asshole. That was great. But yeah, Rebirth, easily best game in the Final Fantasy franchise, right up there with OG7. Now, that said, Remake Part 3 has a very high bar to clear, at least for me. And I want to throw this out there as well. I have some predictions on what I feel Remake Part 3's name is going to be. I know this is kind of off topic, but I want to throw this out there. Just to kind of get that prediction out there into the universe. Remake and Rebirth. Both of those names, both those game titles, they have a similar theme. Creation. Remake, rebirth, you know, birth, creation, the creation of life. I feel like Part 3 is going to be named something like Final Fantasy VII Recreation, or this is what I really think it's going to be, Final Fantasy VII Regenesis. Now, the thing that kind of makes me hesitant to fully commit to Regenesis is the fact that it has Genesis in it. Just the name Genesis. It's going to make people think that Genesis is going to be heavily involved in 7 Part 3, and I don't think that's going to be a thing. Not in the same way that he was like involved in Crisis Core. I think he's going to be mentioned. I think he's going to be involved in some way, but not to the same level as he was in Crisis Core. So calling it Regenesis, but you know, I just feel like they're going to go with the recreation, creating again theme of the subtitle of Part 3. Moving on from Rebirth, we have Dirge of Cerberus. I know a lot of people didn't like Dirge of Cerberus. And when I first played it, I didn't really care much for it either. However, when we revisited it, I think, we revisited it back in 2023 for the Road to Rebirth when I was playing Final Fantasy VII games leading up to 7 Rebirth. I found I actually kind of enjoyed it. I believe Dirge of Cerberus belongs in the bronze tier. I don't think it is good enough to be up there with Remake, and these 4 Final Fantasy games. But I also don't think it's absolute trash. I don't. As a Final Fantasy or a Final Fantasy VII game, Dirge of Cerberus, yeah, it's not really that great. But as a third-person shooter, I don't actually think it's that bad. I really don't. I think the gameplay is actually kind of fun. Now, also, granted, Dirge of Cerberus is essentially Devil May Cry from a third-person over-the-shoulder perspective, with the lead character being Vincent in the Final Fantasy VII universe. That's really all it is. But I still think Dirge of Cerberus is not as bad as people think. People give it credit for. Now, there's this thing here that says Dirge of Cerberus Lost Episode. I didn't even know it was a thing. Never heard of it. Probably not going to play it. So we're going to move on from that. Final Fantasy VII, this is G-Bike. This is, I think, a mobile mini game based on the bike chase mini game in Final Fantasy VII after you jump out of the Shinra HQ at the end of the Midgar section. I don't really have a desire to play it. Same goes true for the Final Fantasy VII snowboarding game. I don't have a desire to play it. It's another mobile game. I don't really care. That's it for the 7 franchise up to this point. Now we're up to Final Fantasy VIII. And if BMO's still here, she knows where... I know where she would want to put it. It would go right here in the trash category. I know she does not like Final Fantasy VIII. I, however, actually kind of like it. I kind of do. I feel the story is mediocre, and the love interest between, Squall and Renoa is eye-rolling at best. But once you learn, or I should say once I learned, the intricacies of the junction system and the battle system, I thoroughly enjoyed Final Fantasy VIII. I really did. And I would put it up here next to Final Fantasy VI. I really would. I don't think 8 is that bad, honestly. I think the world is pretty good. I think the locations are pretty cool. Again, these 2 characters are the... I think Squall's antisocial, keep everybody away from me type of personality suddenly shifting to, oh my god, I need to get to Renoa now, while she's floating through space, and suddenly he becomes obsessed with her during the whole space scene. And even slightly before that, when they're trying to carry her to S-Star, or when he's trying to carry her to S-Star, is too fast of a shift. He goes from absolute asshole to just obsessed with Renoa like that. It was too sudden. It felt too quick of a change. But outside of that, I really liked 8. I really, really did. Final Fantasy IX, while I only played once, I did like it. I liked it quite a bit. I think it deserves to go up here next to Final Fantasy VI. I think it deserves gold. I did like 6. I did like 6. No, I did like 9. I really did like 9. Both the characters are pretty good. I don't like the character designs of 9. They felt like they were all chibi kid characters. Nobody really felt like an adult. And granted, that was just the art style of the game, but it just felt like, it was very cartoony, and so the art style as far as the characters concerned were kind of meh. Whereas 7 and 8 before that, all the characters were very mostly properly proportioned and stuff. I mean, 7 you can kind of not really say proportion because they were all blocky chibi characters. But Final Fantasy IX was more all the characters in that world their proper proportions were chibi characters. 7's chibi characters were proportioned that way mostly because of the way the game's original development was meant for the Nintendo 64, and that design style would have fit the Nintendo 64. They could have made Final Fantasy VII look like 8 as far as the character designs and like proportions and sizes and everything, and ratios and all that, but they originally designed it for the 64, and they didn't bother changing that over to a more realistic look when they decided, hey, we're gonna make our game for the PlayStation instead, because CDs have more space than a cartridge. So, you know, there's a little bit of a reason why 7 looks the way it does. But 9, you know, 9's character designs, I feel, I don't really like them, but the story and the character arcs and the growth and all that, I mostly liked. I didn't like Amarant or whatever his name is. I think that character was a waste of design and time to make. He contributed pretty much nothing to the story. His personality was just like, you know, I think I'd get more excitement out of watching a piece of cardboard float down the street when in the wind. You know, I did not care for Amarant at all. Moving on from that, we go to probably my second favorite Final Fantasy game, and that is Final Fantasy X. Specifically, the HD HD remaster on the PS4/5. I think it was also came out on PS3, but the HD remaster of 10. OG 10 is good as well, but I would recommend a must-play for Final Fantasy X. The HD version, because it includes a lot more in it than the original. The original US version of Final Fantasy X does not have some of the skills. I should say it like this in reverse. The HD version of Final Fantasy X has the international content, which includes some extra skills like sphere distillers, things that you could use, like items that you could throw at enemies that would cause them to give you spheres to use on the sphere grid, specific types of spheres. So if you were looking for ability spheres for the sphere grid, you could use those distiller skills and distiller items on an enemy, and they would force them to drop those spheres for you to use on the grid. So if you were running low on ability spheres, you could use the ability distiller skill on an enemy, and you would get guaranteed drops of ability spheres, which is really nice. And then on top of that, they have the really good stuff like the Dark Aeons and Penance, some really powerful and like really super optional in-game super bosses. Some of the hardest optional super bosses in the franchise. Those are all in the HD version because they were in the international version, the version that came out everywhere in the world besides the US. The original US version of Final Fantasy X did not have all of the international stuff for reasons unknown. But the HD version did include all that. So while this image is of the original PS2, I would say this should really be the HD version of Final Fantasy X. It is the best version to play, and I definitely should say that everybody should play that as well. If you're a first time to the Final Fantasy franchise, I would recommend either 7 or 10. And honestly, believe it or not, I would probably recommend 10 over 7 as your first game, just because of the more, I would say, more noob-friendly combat system of 10 over 7. It's a little more noob-friendly than 7 is. Final Fantasy X-2, also not as good as original 10, but also not as bad as I remember. So I'm going to put 10-2 up here next to Dirge of Cerberus. I don't think it's a trash game. I don't think it's great. I don't think it's good. I think it's okay. If you appreciated the Final Fantasy X world and you liked Yuna and you liked Riku, I think you would enjoy this game. I know it was very heavily meant to be a little more for the female audience, I believe. Even though the characters are more sexualized in 10 than were in 10. Mostly because of the changing of clothes. But I do appreciate how they give you kind of the Final Fantasy III treatment, and how you can change your character's classes via the dress spheres. So if you wanted Yuna to say go from a black mage to a warrior class, you change dress sphere. It changes her outfit as well as all of her abilities and her stats, and that's it's a pretty cool thing. 10.2's battle system is also a little more fast paced than OG 10 rather. OG 10 is completely turn based, whereas 10.2 is a little more active. So like you still have to you put in a command in 10, and your character commits that command right away, or commits that action right away. In 10.2, you put in a command, there's another bar that usually fills. Once that bar fills, then that action happens. And you can kind of combine skills together, sort of, to really unleash a lot of damage all at once, which is kind of nice. 10.2's battle system really was like a precursor to what eventually becomes 13's combat system, as far as like appearance and how characters can kind of like combine attacks all at the same time. While it's still sort of turn-based, characters can still all like attack at the same time. They still require ATB and stuff like that. So 10.2 I don't think is as bad as everybody gives credit for. But it's certainly not one of the better Final Fantasy games overall. This looks like it says Final Fantasy 10, 10.2. I'm guessing this is just like a collection of 10 and 10.2. Well, I'm just going to stick it down here because, I have the HD collection of X and X2. Why play whatever this is? This is Final Fantasy X-2 Last Mission, which is a special, I think I did this when I played X-2. It's like a sort of expansion, I guess you could say, to Final Fantasy X-2, and I want to stick it down here because it's part of the HD version of X-2, and so, I wouldn't play this version because I've already played it here, And that brings us to our first MMO, which is Final Fantasy XI, which is for me going to go down here. Never played Final Fantasy XI. I don't really care to play Final Fantasy XI. First of all, just in general, MMOs aren't really a big thing for me. I don't play them often. And those that I do play really need a special theme for me to be interested in them. So if it's just another swords and medieval times and swords and magic and kings and kingdoms and castles type of MMO, I'm really not going to be that interested in it. So Final Fantasy XI, I don't really care to play. That and what I've seen of the battle system kind of looks boring. Now, at the time, I'm sure it was a huge hit because there was a ton of expansions for it, and it fit well with the MMOs of the time, but not for me now. Not for me now. I don't know what this says. Final Fantasy Grand Masters? I've never heard of Final Fantasy Grand Masters. Never heard of this game. I don't know what it is. We're going to stick it down here. This category's getting huge. Final Fantasy 12. This is the Zodiac Age version? I think this is the international version. Okay, well, since it looks like we have the Zodiac / international version here. So we're going to take original Final Fantasy 12 I'll put it here. Absolute trash. Absolute trash. I did not at all like OG Final Fantasy 12. Not at all. Not at all. The combat system was boring as fuck. The story was boring and like a whole lot of politicking involved. A lot of people say that it's very Star Wars-ish. Sure, I'll take. I don't see the comparison there, but okay, I can understand why possibly that's if they see it that way. I felt like the entire time I was playing OG 12, I felt more like I was just, okay, I'm going to play this and get through it and say, okay, yay, I played Final Fantasy 12, move on. I was very little investment in the characters, save maybe Balthier, hated Frey, I hated Vaughn. Vaughn is easily the stupidest Final Fantasy character. Like, absolutely just clearly nothing between the ears when it comes to Vaughn. Even Dissidia said that Vaughn was a fucking idiot. And that brings us to the follow-up to Final Fantasy 12, which is a DS game, which I think is like a tactical type of sort of game. No desire to play it. Blanking on what the name of it is, but I don't have a desire to play it. I think this is Final Fantasy 12, the Zodiac Age. I think it deserves at least a silver rating because I think it's all right. The Zodiac Age version of 12 is actually pretty good. The licensing system and what you do with the how you build the characters and stuff is much better. I seem to just enjoy the game better in the Zodiac Age than I did in the original version. The story didn't really change, obviously, because, it was the same story. But also the quality of the game overall was better. One thing that I found was really annoying about Final Fantasy 12 is it seemed like all the voice actors had literally done their voice lines over a phone, over a poorly connected phone. Now, the reason for that being they had to compress it down to fit on a CD. So that compression caused the quality of the audio of the voice acting to really just get bad. But still, everybody sounded like they were talking through a phone. And that was just like, it totally killed the immersion for me in addition to just all the other problems this game had. Now, Zodiac Age kind of fixed that, but it still didn't make 12 a great game. 12 is okay. I would definitely recommend, if anybody wanted to play 12 for the first time, I would strongly recommend Zodiac Age over OG 12. Next is Final Fantasy Tactics, and without a doubt, Platinum tier. Tactics was so much fun. I loved Tactics. And I didn't think I would. A long time ago, when I was first introduced to Final Fantasy Tactics, I was just like, what? Huh? I don't get this battle system. What is this? Like you could go into battle and do 3 characters and choose their abilities and cast magic and shoot. What is this? Moving around a square board and what? In what? Huh? It made no sense to me whatsoever. Granted, that was before I discovered games like XCOM, which, aside from the RPG aspect, XCOM is incredibly fun and very much like Final Fantasy Tactics. And after seeing the similarities between XCOM and Tactics, I was like, okay, let me try playing Tactics then. And I am certainly glad I did. Because, holy crap, I enjoyed it. Now, I played the original PS1 version of Tactics, and I hear that there are better versions, including something called the War of the Lions version. I don't know what the differences are between original Tactics and War of the Lions and all the other versions. It'll be up to somebody else to tell me, but of OG Tactics, mwah, chef's kiss. Love it. Love it. These are the other versions of Tactics that I have not played. I don't know which one I should play, so I'm just going to stick them all down here under the never played. Doesn't mean I'm not interested in playing them. I just don't know which one of these if I were to play one of these additional versions, I guess you could say, I don't know which one I would want to put up here, but one of these would belong up here if I knew which one would be the best choice. So there's that. Up next is probably one of the most polarizing Final Fantasy games in the franchise, and that's Final Fantasy 13. And while I understand why a lot of people don't like it, and their reasons are very, very valid, I will say, I feel that if you give the game the chance and you really learn the combat system and the paradigm system and the battle system of 13, I think this game is great. I think this game is absolutely great. I do believe 13 gold tier. I really, really do. Now, again, like I said, the problem with 13, besides the environment, I know a vast majority of the game is long, narrow hallways. Map design is bad. I cannot lie. I cannot defend it. I can't apologize for it. It is admittedly bad. And unfortunately, it's either feast or famine. You've got long, narrow hallways everywhere, or you've got some place like the Arcanite Steppe that is basically open world. You've got hallways that turn a little bit everywhere. You might get one jump here or there. Or you've got Final Fantasy 15 open world, basically. You know? It's not a whole lot of in between. And another problem that 13 has is the way the story is told. 13's story, in general, is actually very good. It really, really and truly is. It is a very good story. However, let me go to full screen here. I just realized I didn't have that on. However, 13's story is told very poorly. 13's story is broken up between the cutscenes and a data log. Some more critical plot points throughout 13 is in the data log, requiring you to stop playing the game, go to the data log, and go read a wall of text filling in information that should be either in a cutscene or in NPC dialogue or something to that effect. Putting so much story of 13, or any game for that matter, in a data log is not a good way to tell your story. A data log is good for expanding on information that is not critical to the story, but adds to development of a character or a location or a world. And a good example of a quality data log is the codex system of Mass Effect. I'm mostly specifically referring to Mass Effect 1, but 2 and 3 also have the similar type of codex, and so does the Dragon Age franchise, from what I can recall. With the codex, I'm going to really refer to Mass Effect 1 because it's the codex I know the most. In Mass Effect 1, you can play the whole game of Mass Effect 1, never read a single letter of the codex, and you will still understand the story, for the most part, from beginning to end. If you do read the codex in Mass Effect 1, you get a lot more backstory. You'll understand characters and alien races and worlds, things like the Council, how it was formed, and the things like the Krogan rebellions and the Rachni Wars and crap like that. You know, you get references to those things throughout the story with the NPCs and dialogue and stuff like that. But then you could go read that stuff in the codex and get even more information. And that is the proper way to do that. In 13, there are major gaps in the story that if you don't read the data log, you're going to wonder why things are happening. One particular point that I can reference from personal experience. When you were with Sid Raines aboard the sorry, not Sid Raines. What's the dude's name? He has a really weird name, but the dude with the long, like, stringy hair kind of looks a little bit like Laguna, I guess. Enough with the bonding. Let's get out of here. You know, that guy. You get essentially rescued by him at Hope's father's house, right? And then you go with him, and then just before you guys leave, he takes you to the Palamecia, where Vanille and Saz are held prisoner. Well, after you do the whole thing with Palamecia, and you rescue Saz and Vanille, and you fight Bartendless / Daisley for the first time, and you end up in the third arc underneath Cocoon, and then you go through that area. Once you leave that area, the first thing you come to is Sid Raines, and he's an enemy now. And everybody's mad at him. Like, Lightning attacks him. Fang is like, "Why are you here?" Lightning takes her weapon and actually tries to attack Sid, and then you have to fight Sid as a boss. Why? At no point between the time that Sid and his group rescues you and you fight him at the end of the third arc was it explained why Sid is now somebody we should dislike or hate or fight. 0 point. Why do we suddenly not like this guy? Now, the answer to that question, I believe it's in the data log. But nowhere during cutscenes or NPC dialogue or dialogue between characters is that ever explained. And that is one of my biggest complaints about Final Fantasy XIII, specifically about the storytelling. Yeah, I dislike the long narrow hallways as well, but mostly my complaints is the storytelling and the way it's told. That's why I don't think 13 could be in a platinum category if the storytelling was done better. But the gameplay, the battle system, the paradigm system, learning of those abilities, utilizing each character, which when you utilize them properly, makes the game really, really fun. Taking advantage of like the difference between a commando and a ravager, and then wearing down an enemy and making them stagger, and then unleashing damage. You see those huge damage numbers on a staggered enemy. So satisfying. So satisfying. That's why 13, I feel, is so good. 13-2. 13-2 I'm also going to put in the gold category, although I will say I actually like it a bit less than 13. And that's only because it just doesn't have the same feel as 13. But the reason it stays the same category, the same level, the same tier, is because a lot of the complaints I just talked about with 13 are fixed in 13-2. When it comes to the paradigm shifting in 13, whenever you're changing paradigms from one set of roles to another, there's like this cutscene that happens, this animation, while the characters do this little fancy dance move as they're changing from Sentinel to Ravager or whatever, each time during the first shift during battle. And every shift after that, it's just a simple color change, the paradigm shift, and the battle continues. But there's that extra time it takes for each person to do the change and see the animation and all that stuff. That's time wasted that could have been used to make the battle go by faster. And in the 13 games, strength is not your ally, but speed. Every battle in 13 is a DPS race. You want to outdo the damage you deal per second to the enemies because they will DPS you to death. And so they take that out with 13-2. With 13-2, whenever you change paradigms, the animations happen, and there's no like cut to character, do animation, cut to second character, do animation, cut to third character, do animation. All the while, you're just sitting there waiting for that to happen because you can't put in commands while that's happening. So they sped that up, and that's a very good thing. 13.2 has a little bit of a Pokemon kind of thing because you really only have two characters in the story, being Saz and Noel. And you can have a third party member being a character, an enemy that you can sort of catch, not really Pokemon style, but you do kind of recruit them and catch them. And that third character becomes the third class that you can use in your paradigm. So whatever paradigm you want Sarah and Noel to be, you choose an enemy to fill that third role. So if you've got Sarah being a Ravager and Noel being a Commando, if you want a Sentinel, you would put a Sentinel type enemy in the third slot, and there's your paradigm. You want Ravager Commando and another Ravager, you would still keep those two the same and have a monster being a Ravager type that you would put, and there's your third paradigm for paradigm number 2. So kind of a unique way to keep the paradigm system in there and still include the involvement of sort of capturing the monsters that you have around the field. And of course, each monster that you capture, depending on which one you do, has different stats and stuff that help your team in different ways. So that's really cool. They also remove the linearity of 13. 13, once you get through a zone, you can never ever go back to that previous zone, with the exception of the Arcanite Step and a few other areas after you reach Grand Pulse. Every place else that you go to in Final Fantasy 13 prior to Grand Pulse can never be visited again. You can't go back to the Vile Peaks, they go back to the Hanging Edge, or any of those areas ever again. Once they're gone, they're gone. 13.2, you have the ability, even though it's technically considered time travel, you can kind of fast travel between every area for the most part throughout the entire game. This looks like it's just a collection of 13 to 13.2, so put it down there, we don't care. And then we come to Lightning Returns. Now, of the 13 trilogy, Lightning Returns is the weakest. I will agree. It's not as bad as people make out to be, though. I will say that. 13.3, aka Lightning Returns, my biggest complaint about Lightning Returns is the fact that you are literally on a limited timer. You have from 6 p.m. to 6 p.m. to... Actually, no, I think it's... Is it noon? Is it midnight to 6 p.m.? I forgot exactly what it is, but you have a time limit to do things in the world. There are things that you can use, like skills and items and such, to stop the timer from progressing. But you have a limited amount of time to do the things in each world. And a lot of times, some of those things that you need to do are restricted to a certain window of time during the day or night. Like some characters at night are not there because maybe they're at a shop, or they're only out for whatever reason, or they're only out at night because whatever reason. And when you're trying to accomplish things and get things done, and you go to where that character is and they're not there because they don't appear till after 5 p.m. or whatever, or after 3 p.m., that gets annoying because, all right, well, I'm going to go do this then, go do this other thing, because it's like, we don't have, because it's not 5 o'clock yet. You do those things, then maybe you lose track of time, or it takes too long, and then you miss that opportunity, and now you can go back and do that thing because now it's after the time that they leave, and it's the end of the day, and you got to start over and wait for them again. It's just that limitation gets annoying. It does get annoying. The battle system I don't think is too bad. It is unique compared to 13 and 13.2, because even though it's a one-character party, you kind of have the Final Fantasy X-2 sort of thing, where you can change character classes on the fly. Granted, you're limited to 3. You're only limited. You have to like build them up before the battle. Or you have to set them before the battle. But you're limited to 3 dress spheres, what they call schemata. And then each one has a different role, and you do things differently to get enemies to stagger and so forth throughout the game. So I don't feel it belongs to this category. I don't feel that Lightning Returns is trash. I feel it's definitely better than OG 12. But I don't think it's as good as, you know, any of the games in the silver category. I think Lightning Returns gets safely put in the bronze tier. I think it's okay. Not good, not great, not shit. Okay. This just says lightning on it. I don't know what speciality this is. I'm not sure what this is either. I'm just sticking over here. It just says Final Fantasy on it, whatever. I think this is original Final Fantasy 14. I never played original 14. I have no desire to experience or see original 14. So we're going to go there and move on. Now, this is 14 Realm Reborn. So this was 14 after they realized, oh shit, what we made of 14 OG is a piece of shit. Let's remake the game and make it better. And then we have this one. And I'll put it here. You know, it is an MMO. So like I said before, MMOs really have to be something special for me to want to play them. And the only reason I do play this one, even though it is like I say, the stereotypical swords and magic and kings and castles and all that kind of stuff, is because it's Final Fantasy. So it gets a pass. Its theme is good enough just because it's a Final Fantasy game that I'm willing to play it every once in a while. And I don't think it's bad at all. It's enjoyable enough. The gameplay is fast enough. The classes that I've played and stuff are fun enough. You know, I like it enough. But it's not something that I'm just like, I can't wait to play more of this. Mostly because it's an MMO. I don't like taking my time playing an MMO because really MMOs don't have an ending. And there's not a whole lot of games that don't have an end that I really like. I mean, you know, just kind of the way I am. Nothing against the way that they're designed, but it's just not my kind of thing. And these are all the expansions to 14. I'm just going to put them in I guess I can put them up here next to 14 OG because, you know, as far as I'm concerned, since I don't know like the stories of how they fit or what they are or anything like that, they're kind of just all encompassing. To me, it's all Final Fantasy 14. So it's all the same to me as far as that goes. Now, it's kind of weird that they have the Platinum demo to Final Fantasy 15 on this list. Why specifically the Platinum demo? The only reason I can understand that it's here is because the Platinum demo exists nowhere else in Final Fantasy 15. Like the actual content in the demo, outside of the main character being Noctis and his gameplay, is nowhere in the game. It's all like a dream of some sort in Noctis' head. But I did play the demo. That's how I knew what Final Fantasy's story, or like Final Fantasy 15's combat was. So I did play it, but I mean, it was good. It was okay. I think it belongs in the okay category. I just thought it was all right. I thought it was all right. I don't even know what this is. I can't even see it. Final Fantasy 15 War for Eos? Is that the I think War for Eos was a mobile game, like a city builder kind of thing. I don't care. Justice Monsters 5. That was the pinball game spin-off from Final Fantasy 15. You could actually play Justice Monsters in Final Fantasy 15. King's Knight, basically the same thing. It's a spin-off of 15 that was actually, in the game, because sometimes when you'd go to camp, you would play, Noctis, the others would play King's Knight, and you'd see them playing on their phones or whatever, and they were playing King's Knight, so this is another spin-off thing to 15. A New Empire, I don't know what this is. I don't know what a King's Tale is. It's all part of like the expanded world of 15. 15 Pocket Edition. I've never had the desire to play the Pocket Edition because it's 15, but in the chibi style. Why would I bother? But 15 itself, Final Fantasy 15, especially if you play the Royal Edition, very good. It's very, very good. I think pretty much every one, all except one of the expansion episodes that give more backstory to each character are phenomenally good. Prompto's is really good. Gives a lot of story about Prompto's background, and you see Aranea in it, giving her some background story as well. Oops, what the hell? What the hell happened? I don't know why that did that, but okay. I must have hit the back button by accident. Oops. Ignis's was really, really fun. Well, plenty of side stuff you can do there as well, because you can kind of like, once you like go to a zone and you defeat all the Imperial soldiers there, that zone becomes yours, or your allies in this case, which would be Altissia or the Accordo. That was fun. Seeing Ignis and how he becomes blinded by taking the Ring of the Lucii and fighting Arden. Oh, so heart-wrenching and so good. It really, Ignis is easily my favorite character of Final Fantasy 15, and I thought so even in the base game, but even playing episode Ignis really just cemented how much I loved Ignis as a character. Just easily like the guy of Final Fantasy 15. I like him better than Noctis. I like Prompto, but Ignis is still better. Obviously Gladio is the lowest tier possible because Gladio is just a meathead asshole. As much as I like Ignis, I dislike Gladio as much on the opposite end. Gladio, there is nothing positive about Gladio's character. His DLC episode is boring as fuck, short of fighting Gilgamesh. His gameplay, I feel, sucks. His character overall sucks. The way he treats Noctis sucks. I get that his motivations are to be Noctis's protector and to be the fire under his ass when Noctis is kind of like falling off the train, so to speak. But there's nothing redeeming about him. There's nothing redeeming about Gladio. I do not like Gladio. Final Fantasy 16, I really want to play it. I loved the demo, and I really want to play it, but haven't yet. What is this? I don't know what that is. Final Fantasy Type 0. I think this is Type 0. I'm not sure. I feel like these are a couple of like maybe Japanese only games. I don't know. I don't know which one of these might be Type 0, but I do want to play Type 0. Brave Exvius. No, I have no desire to play that. It was a mobile game. I don't really care to play it. I don't want to keep zooming in, but I gotta find out. Is one of these Type 0? Vegito. Final Fantasy Awakening. Okay, it's not. None of those are what I was looking for. I was trying to find Type 0 because I did like Type 0. All right, I would like to play Type 0. I've seen a little bit of gameplay. I like Type 0. King's Tale Final Fantasy 15 is a 2D side-scrolling brawler set 30 years before Final Fantasy 15. Okay, all right. Yeah, I know it's based on the handheld game that Noctis, Ignis, and the other the brothers, the dudes, play during some of the times at camp. So I like how they actually included that as a side game. That's actually pretty cool. This is, Brave Exvius again. Don't care. I can't see some of this shit. I don't want to keep zooming in. I don't know what they are. If I can't tell what they are easily, I'm not going to bother figuring it out. Final Fantasy Artnix. I don't even know what that is. Artnix Dive. I don't know what the hell that is either. I think we're getting into like some really obscure games now. Let me see if I can look at the rest of these. Is there anything here I actually want to put up? Okay, here's World of Final Fantasy. We're gonna put that one. We're gonna put that one in the want to play. I really want to play World of Final Fantasy. Pretty much from here on, I'm gonna put in the I would put in this category. Okay, here's Dissidia Duodecim. I have played it, and I want to play it again, so we're going to put that one up here. I really like Dissidia. I think it deserves gold. I really, really enjoyed. Now, again, I just played Duodecim. I didn't play original Dissidia. I don't really think I want to play original Dissidia. But I do want to finish Duodecim. Type 0 is okay? Yeah. I'd like to play Type 0. Dissidia NT. I really, really, really want to like Dissidia NT. I really do, because while I love Duodecim, it is unfortunately on PSP, so it's PSP quality graphics, which are, PSP. But Dissidia NT, they look phenomenal. They're PS4 quality. They look really, really good. But the gameplay, what the fuck? Why would you put 3v3 team-based, take away some abilities, and then put bullshit like summon battles in the story? And why is your story about suck so bad? Fuck! You had such great potential. How did you fuck that up? Wouldn't mind playing Dissidia Opera Omnia. I hear that's pretty good. Final Fantasy Legends, I don't care. Final Fantasy Explorers, I don't know if you've heard of. I don't know any of these. Worldwide Words, Heaven Strike Rivals. Final Fantasy Portal app, that's actually put in this. What? Okay, Mobius Final Fantasy. While this is a mobile game, I actually did like Mobius Final Fantasy. I actually did. I'd put it in the silver category, honestly. I actually did. I didn't play it a lot, but when I did play it, I truly enjoyed it, especially when they added a female character. And they added the fact that you could actually go to some of the Final Fantasy worlds. Like you go to Midgar. I think you went to, at some point, Final Fantasy VIII's worlds. So I really did enjoy that. I really did enjoy Mobius Final Fantasy. I don't know what that is, or that. I think that's Mystic Quest. There's a Mystic Quest, but I don't know. There's Mystic Quest. I only seen a very little of this. I really don't have a desire to play it. The version of World of Final Fantasy, which I've already got up there. Digital card game, Pictologica. Never heard of it. I'm not sure what this is supposed to be. I think this is Theater Rhythm. Never really had a desire to play to that, and there's that. So, pretty much from here onward is... Actually, I should put this in Want to Play. I wouldn't mind trying to play Opera Omnia. As far as the rest of these, all of these belong here in the not played or not interested category. But, so... Overall, you can look at it like this. Everything down here that's left would go in this category, but everything else, pretty much the most important stuff, which would be these 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 categories up here. This is my tier list of the Final Fantasy franchise. OG 7, 7 Rebirth, and 10 must play. Platinum, Crisis Core Reunion and Tactics. Gold is 6, 8, 9, 13, 2, 15, and Dissidia Duodecim. Silver is the first 4 Final Fantasies. 7 Remake, 12 Zodiac Age, 14, 15 Platinum Demo, and Mobius. Bronze is 5, 6 OG Crisis Core, Dirge, 10, 2, and Lightning Returns. Dissidia NT, and 12 Absolute Trash. And then I would like to play Stranger of Paradise, Ever Crisis, World of Final Fantasy, and Dissidia Opera Omnia. So there we go. There's my first tier list of literally all the Final Fantasy games up to this point in 2024. So what's your opinion? Leave a comment below. Let me know what you think. But yeah, that's going to do it for this little episode of this tier maker stuff. Or this tier list. So I'm going to wrap this one up here, and then we're going to wrap this one up here. For those of you watching live on Twitch, don't worry. We're going to jump into Warcraft 2 right after this. So I'm going to say goodbye to the YouTube side, and yeah, thank y'all for watching. If you did enjoy this content, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know what you think of my tier list. If you where you would put certain things, I'd love to hear your opinion on it. If you'd like to catch us live, we're live over on Twitch at twitch.tv/CreatorKrim. As always, special appreciation goes out to the men and women of the United States military, both at home and overseas, those police officers and firefighters across the country. Thank you for your service and sacrifice. You're all true heroes. I'll see you all in the next one. Until then, have a good night.